Okay, let's dive right into this explainer because we're looking at a truly fascinating transformation today. When most of us think of poetry, we probably think of beautiful metaphors, rhymes, maybe some rhythmic storytelling. But what actually happens when contemporary Indian English poetry completely transcends that, when it becomes this profound tool for social resistance and systemic critique? Today, we're going to explore how modern poets are using their craft not just to paint pretty pictures with words, but to actively dismantle structures of identity, justice, language, and memory. Right off the bat, the crucial point we're starting with is this powerful quote from our source material. Poetry does not merely tell stories, it asks questions that society often avoids. This just brilliantly sets up our entire journey today. It reminds us that the greatest literature doesn't exist to make us feel cozy and comfortable. Actually, it forces us to confront those uncomfortable societal realities that we usually just brush past in our busy daily lives. So, we really have to ask ourselves this core question. What happens when poetry literally becomes resistance? Keep this in the back of your minds as we go. It's going to guide our whole analysis as we look at how different poets use their wildly unique voices to challenge the status quo, pushing back against everything from unchecked consumerism to caste discrimination and rigid patriarchal norms. To get to the bottom of this, we're going to look through 5 distinct lenses: the Buddha's silent laughter, rewriting the Ekalavya myth, reclaiming language and identity, the paradox of migration, and finally, asking the better questions. Okay, jumping into section 1, the Buddha's silent laughter, exploring consumerism versus spirituality. To really unpack Praveen Gadvi's poem Laughing Buddha, our source brings in this super interesting concept from the French philosopher Henri Bergson. Bergson argued that laughter actually emerges whenever the mechanical is imposed upon the living. Now, what does that mean in plain English? Basically, it means things become absurd, and we laugh, when humans stop acting with empathy and independent thought, and instead just blindly follow habits or rigid rules like machines. Think of a government officer ignoring human suffering over a tiny technicality, or a religious leader preaching peace while practicing discrimination. This perfectly illustrates the poem's core critique. The Buddha's laughter isn't just a jolly, happy chuckle. It's a compassionate yet highly ironic response to a society that has become incredibly mechanical and hypocritical. Which brings us to a huge paradox. Can enlightenment really be purchased? The source points out this beautiful yet kind of uncomfortable truth in the poem. Today we go out and buy these expensive laughing Buddha statues, hoping for business success, wealth, and good luck. We've literally turned a spiritual figure into a shiny market product. And in doing so, we completely forget that the historical Buddha actually renounced material possessions and taught detachment. So the Buddha in the poem is silently laughing at this exact contradiction. We're eager to sell the Buddha while completely forgetting Buddhism. Moving right along to section 2, rewriting the Ekalavya myth. This is all about privilege versus merit. So, we're looking at the Dalit poem Eklavyan, and it completely rewrites a mythological story that so many people thought they already knew. In the traditional Mahabharata view, Eklavya, who taught himself archery after being rejected by Guru Drona, is celebrated as this ideal disciple. Why? Because he unquestioningly cut off his own thumb when the Guru demanded it as payment. But the Dalit perspective presented in the poem shifts the lens entirely. It exposes a systemic flaw, suggesting that Drona wasn't protecting justice or rewarding merit at all. Instead, he was just protecting the social privilege of his favored, royal student Arjuna. So the poem radically transforms Drona from an ideal teacher into a symbol of institutional gatekeeping. And this connects to modern society so brilliantly through this quote from poet Meena Kandasamy. She points out that today's marginalized students obviously don't lose physical thumbs, but they're still forced to pay a terribly heavy price to educational institutions. Today, that thumb is a lost scholarship, it's a denied admission, or it's crushed confidence due to systemic prejudice and unequal access to resources. The poem really forces us to pause and ask whether a system truly values merit if it only ends up protecting those who already hold privilege. Okay, on to section 3, reclaiming language and identity. We'll be touching on gender and post-colonialism here. We've got 2 vastly different poets here, but they are both using language to bravely speak the unspeakable and really reclaim who they are. On one side, you have Kamala Das's poem, An Introduction, which uses this deeply personal, fearless confession to dismantle patriarchal expectations. She flat out refuses to be silent about her life.
Then, on the totally opposite side of the spectrum, we have Nassim Ezekiel's The Patriot, which uses affectionate, gentle satire to question post-colonial nationalism and linguistic identity. So we have two totally different styles, one incredibly emotional, one very humorous, but they are both fundamentally challenging the restrictive labels that society tries to force onto them.
Looking a bit closer at Kamala Das, her poem lists the endless, exhausting instructions society imposes on women: how to dress, how to speak, which language to write in, and literally even whom to love. Critics famously badgered her, asking why she chose to write in English instead of a regional language, and her response is just this powerful declaration. She says language belongs to whoever uses it to express genuine emotion. She totally rejects the idea that her identity should be policed by society's arbitrary rules. And by doing that, she makes her intensely personal writing a highly political act of resistance. Then we switch gears to Nissim Ezekiel, who poses a really complex question. What does it really mean to be Indian after colonialism? In The Patriot, Ezekiel intentionally writes in incorrect or broken post-colonial Indian English. And he's not mocking Indians here at all. He's capturing a unique linguistic reality. He's showing us that English no longer belongs just to Britain. By celebrating this unique rhythm of speech, he highlights a society that is caught right in the middle between traditional values and Western influence. And he uses this to expose some serious societal contradictions through gentle satire. The speaker in The Patriot proudly claims to be a massive patriot, praising India endlessly. Yet, in the exact same breath, he casually ignores glaring, everyday issues like corruption, poverty, and social inequality. Ezekiel's playfully reminding us here that genuine patriotism isn't just blind praise, right? It has to include the honest, sometimes really uncomfortable questioning of one's own country. He makes us laugh for sure, but then he immediately makes us realize that we are actually laughing at ourselves. Bringing us to Section 4, the paradox of migration, looking at memory versus geography. Exploring Rachna Joishi's poem, Leaving India, the source highlights this incredibly beautiful, kind of bittersweet paradox at its center, perfectly capturing the emotional complexity of our globalized world. You see, physical distance actually creates emotional closeness. The speaker physically leaves India, yet India never actually leaves the speaker. Home stops being a dot on a map and becomes a vividly real place within the mind. The farther the migrant travels geographically, the stronger and more profound their memories become. And just look at these specific, intangible fragments of home that Joshi lists out. A migrant might adapt to a new country and a new life, sure, but they carry these sudden memories: the smell of monsoon rain, the sound of temple bells, roadside tea stalls, or the deep comfort of casual conversations in their mother tongue. These aren't just background details, they're emotional anchors. The poem emphasizes that migration isn't just this dry economic or geographic change. It is a deep, lifelong transformation of memory and identity. You can leave home, but you carry it with you everywhere you go. Finally, Section 5, asking the better questions. Let's see how this all ties together. When we step back and look at these distinct literary critiques side by side, a really clear pattern emerges, revealing the true purpose of contemporary literature. Gandhi uses silent laughter to expose our hypocrisy. Ekalev rewrites an ancient myth to confront modern discrimination. Kamala Das uses raw, unfiltered honesty to celebrate individuality. Ezekiel uses satire to question blind nationalism. And Joshi completely redefines the very concept of home. The subjects are totally different, right? But every single one of these poets successfully transforms ordinary, everyday ideas into these extraordinary reflections on what it really means to be human. So the absolutely crucial takeaway from our source material is encapsulated in this final thought. The best poems are not the ones that give us answers. They are the ones that leave us asking better questions. Great poetry, and honestly great literature in general, just does not exist to hand us a neat, comfortable summary of life. It exists to make us thoughtful. It practically invites us into an ongoing conversation about justice, dignity, and truth. Which brings us to the end of this explainer. I want to leave you with this provocative question to reflect on. Are you ready to stop just memorizing meanings and start rethinking the world around you? Think about how these poetic voices of resistance, whether they're challenging consumerism, rewriting history, or completely redefining identity, might actually apply to your own understanding of society today. The poems themselves might end on the page, but their questions, those continue inside all of us.